What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 podcast, the official podcast of the All 22 fantasy football platform, which is the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. Ray, we did a really fun episode a few weeks back where we debated the rankings of the rookie quarterbacks, but in relation now to the rest of the NFL, right? Or the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL. All 22 is a different game. It's not just quarterbacks. It's not just running backs. It's not just receivers, right? We have all 22 positions plus punters and kickers. And we have the opportunity with that to have some really fun debates that other fantasy football platforms really don't get to have. Offensive linemen is probably our biggest differentiator, right? We accurately grade offensive linemen. I know there are people that do offensive linemen on Excel books, and they judge it based on like pressures or rushing yards and kind of odd things, right? Which I understand. They're just hungry to find a way to make it work. All 22 makes it work because we use analytical grading from PFF as part of our scoring equation. So with that, I think we should debate offensive linemen. I said all of that to be like, let's debate tackles today.
I feel like we could do that for every podcast episode. Like every podcast episode, every week, I'm like, I want to debate offensive tackle. Like, let's just say the same thing every week about how much we want to debate offensive tackle because it's just so much fun. But yes, I would love to debate offensive tackle, especially because this draft class, we are now, is it exactly a month after, close to it, after the 2024 NFL draft, was chock full of offensive tackles. It was an offensive tackle heavy class in particular. So if you needed one, this was the year to go grab one. So it's a great year for it. And it's always a good time to talk offensive tackle in general. So why not?
I think even beyond that, like besides that, it was chock full of offensive tackles. A lot of people's rankings were pretty different from the start of the NFL draft. Whereas like quarterbacks, like we kind of knew what the top three guys were going to be, and they kind of went in the order we all thought they would. Maybe, it was surprising Michael Penix went 4, but I think, 4, 5, and 6 in the quarterback class were a separate group. I think the tackle class is not only is it very deep, but I think it's more interchangeable where quarterbacks had kind of went in the order that it was supposed to, right? And like, we were like, yep, this guy's probably here. Like offensive tackle, I think there's more of a conversation to be had since JC Latham went second, right? Like, and that's there was a lot of that at offensive tackle. So why don't you start by sharing the All 22 website, right? We could go to the players page. We'll use that as the tool for us to have this conversation. And the first tackle, I guess even before that, right? Like the list at offensive tackle here, these current rankings, I kind of threw together on a whim. I don't feel great about them at all. So I'm thinking we're going to change a lot more than just the rookies, which I think is good.
Oh yeah, I have tons of issues with it.
I know you do. You have issues
We're
with it.
We're going to argue about this.
So let's start at the very, very top, I guess, right? So Penny Sewell is number 1. Tristan Wirfs is 2. Andrew Thomas is 3. Mailata is 4. Stopping there, full stop. How do you feel about the top 4?
Top 4 is fine. Personal preference maybe between like a Wirfs and a Thomas or what have you. But I think by and large, those top 4 are fine. My one thing would be, hey, Rashad Slater should be up there, which I don't know if we're going to argue about that now when we get to the second, second layer of this, but that's the only other name I think that could be argued should be a potential top 4 offensive tackle. And I get it. He's ranked a little bit lower because, again, he was dinged for some time missed over the past couple of years. I think in 2022 in particular with some injuries. But when healthy and when fully healthy, he is one of the top tackles. So in my opinion, one of the top 4 tackles in the league. So I would have him slotted somewhere probably above Mailata just due to age and what I consider just a fantastic player when healthy. But having those 4 names as the top 4 in and of themselves, I don't see much argument to be made there. It's just, should someone else maybe be worthy of contending for that same tier? And just the one name I would put there is Rashawn Slater.
So I completely agree with you. I think Slater should be in that conversation. I think Darrisaw needs to be probably in that group as well. So like, I think those two guys probably are above the rookies this year just because we haven't seen them, right? We talk about that. We talked about that with quarterbacks. It's if you haven't seen them play as pros, it's really hard to just bump them above the elite guys at the position, right? Like we had a very long conversation about that with Caleb Williams. Same is true for tackle. Those are the two guys, in my opinion, I think need to be moved up because they've already shown you that they can play at an extremely high level in the NFL. Injury stuff with Slater, I think there's something there. You know, we need to see him stay healthy. So that matters. But besides, I guess that's now 6 tackles. Is there anybody else that we are sure needs to be at the top of this list before we even start debating where the rookies fall?
You scroll down a bit. I think, maybe again, if you're looking at 1 year, you could say someone like a Tunsil or obviously a Trent Williams. But again, you're building a franchise. This is a dynasty setup primarily, right? So age is a factor here. This is as if you're starting your own team. So while you may want to argue that, hey, Trent Williams is better than these guys or Laramie Tunsil is just as good, again, age is a bit of a factor here. All those names we mentioned, the oldest one is Jordan Mailata at 27. So I think when you take age into account, I think that's the clear top 6 linemen that have proved themselves so far in the NFL, and they should be at the top of the rankings.
Okay, I agree with you. So I think right after that is maybe where we slot the first rookie. Now, I understand that could be debated. I will just be the jerk that makes his first case, and I think it is Alt, who was the first tackle taken in the draft. But it's not just because I thought he was the best prospect of the tackle group in this draft because of the very, very high-end floor that he offered, his massive frame. I thought he had the best skill set, the best tools, knowledge of the position of any prospect I had seen at the tackle position as an incoming prospect in years. The only knock I had on him was I didn't think he was the high-end athlete that a guy like Penei Sewell or Tristan Wirfs were coming into the draft. Saying that, he landed on the Chargers with new head coach, and the head coach loves to run the football and does a really great job making offensive lineman situations look real easy. I really like this for Alt. Just like I like it for Slater, I really like this for Alt. And I don't know if there's much of a debate. I'll let you debate it if you want to, but I don't know if there's much of a debate as to anybody else getting that number 1 spot.
The problem is the fit is so good. If you are to argue this and try to go to bat for someone like a Latham or Fashanu, right? The fit is so good for Joe Alt. He lands in a perfect situation. He's probably going to slot at right tackle in that run-heavy offense. Is going to play to his strengths, downhill, play action, a lot of horizontal motion, that sort of thing. That's tackle-friendly and just fits into his overall play style. That in 12 months, he is set up by far the best of the rookies to have the most early success. So anyone who tries to argue that I like Latham more than Alt and I like Fashanu more than Alt, and you try to take a long-term view at this, in 12 months, people are going to fire back at you with however successful Alt was this year, because I think he's the clear leader in the clubhouse to have the most successful rookie year, if nothing else, of this tackle class. I will say JC Latham, I mean, we talked about it. Some people thought he was a right tackle only, maybe even a guard. I think we both thought he could play left tackle successfully. And he goes to Bill Callahan, in my opinion, the best offensive line coach in the NFL. It's a great fit for him overall. They also have a need. So I don't think the style of play is going to allow him to be as successful early on in 2024. 3 years from now, though, I could see Latham being the best of the bunch. I could also see Fashanu being the best of the bunch because, again, you're talking about an offensive tackle, and he is the best pass-blocking offensive tackle in the class. So while he might not play right away, you have someone like Tyron Smith in front of him in New York who knows how long that lasts if Smith can stay healthy. But, 3 years from now, because I say it all the time, you don't necessarily draft a player or draft a rookie in all 22 for what they're going to do for you this upcoming season. You want to draft them for 24, 36 months down the line. 36 months from now, I could see any of the three of Fashanu, Latham, and Alt having the best career moving forward from that point on. I could see it being any of those three. I think Alt is the safer choice because they're all very good, but he also has a great landing spot for his style of play and his overall fit. So I think he's a safe choice, but I don't think it's crazy to have those other two names in there. I really don't. I could see it either way.
Sure. No, I mean, I agree. And
sure, you did not believe that at all. Sure.
Sure.
You didn't believe a word I said.
Because I think Alt's situation is so good that it's really hard to see a situation where he fails. But I also agree with what you said in that Latham and Fashanu are 3 years from now potentially like they have the skill set and the size and the frames to be the best tackles in the NFL, right? Like it's like I said, Alt lacks some of that high-end athleticism that I typically like in that elite tier of tackle prospect. Those guys have that. So does that make a big difference 2-3 years down the road? Maybe. I don't think I would take that gamble over something as sure as what Alt should be, right? So I think from that standpoint, and it sounds like we're in agreement on this, is that Alt would be the number one on this list in terms of the rookies, landing at number 7 right behind Slater. And I'm writing this down this time so that our conversation goes a little smoother.
Good.
But so it's Penny Sewell, Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, Jordan Mailata, Christian Darrisaw, Christian Slater, Joe Alt at 7. So I think the issue I have, right, with the conversation that we just had is if Latham and Fashanu's kind of, ceiling is super, super high. They didn't land in bad situations either, but the floor is potentially not, fantastic. Do we feel great including them on this list over some of the other guys in this realm, right? So you mentioned earlier Laramie Tunsil, right? Probably has 5 or 6 years left. That's plenty of time to take them over an unknown rookie. So do you take Tunsil? Do you take McGrary? Do you take Miller? Do you take Bowles, right? I think there's a bunch of guys on this list that potentially you'd want over some of the unknowns of these rookies. So let's have that debate, I guess. Like, are you just slotting in one of the rookies, or do you think we need to put a Tunsil in between?
I think by now I'm like the wrong person to ask because I'm just chasing the ceiling. So I am the guy that gets tempted by, Fashion is 21 years old and I believe in the talent. So why not slot him above? But you said it, especially offensive tackle, the lifespan of an offensive tackle, you can play till you're 33. I mean, look at Trent Williams. He's 30. He's going to be 36 years old. And he has been the best offensive tackle in the league the last few years. You could say he's slowing down, I guess, 89.7 overall grade, a top 3 run blocker and a top 12 pass blocker in 2023, second tackle overall in the league. So again, you like to use the 3-year window. Well, if you're using a 3-year window, you're really going to pass up someone like Tunsil or Caleb McGarry, even a Colton Miller, for some rookies who, at the very least, you anticipate a learning curve. And in someone like Fashanu's case, might not even start for the majority of his first year. So you're already losing 1 year. It's a hard sell. So I think you have Alt there as kind of the next guy after that top tier, because he is going to play right away and he's set up for such success in his style of play. Like you said, he's got that high floor, also very high ceiling. So you kind of know what you're going to get. It's a very safe pick with upside, right? Which is what everyone wants and is looking for. Then after that, I think the sub 30-year-old high-end tackles, you start to slot them in too. So I would have Tunsil, I go back and forth on Tunsil and McGarry because I think now that theoretically the Falcons have a good quarterback there that can maybe open up the offense a bit more through the air, that can help someone like McGarry. So I'd probably put him above Tunsil, but you could go either way because, I mean, the Texans offense is just humming and they added some great personnel too. So however you want to pair those two up, I think those are the next 2 names, followed by a Colton Miller. And then I think the conversation from then on goes, do you want to slot Trent Williams also above some of the rookies or the younger guys that maybe have upside but haven't been at a top 10 or 15 level performance-wise just yet. How do you factor those in versus someone like Trent Williams who maybe has 1 or 2 years left in your ranking? So I think, next up it's McGarry and Tunsil. If you want to argue for one over the other, I'd love to hear, but I think those are the next two names. I can't believe I let you slide Zach Tom in here this high up in the rankings, but I'll just ignore that for now.
It was all an equation, right? It wasn't me. It was the
your
computer.
Equation, not an equation. You act like you just chat GPT'd this thing.
It's true. It was my equation. And that's part of it in this conversation that we need to have. I think you're right. I think it's Tunsil is next for me, at least. I think McGarry's right after. I think Colton Miller would also make that spot. So that would be my 8, 9, and 10. But there are some interesting guys there, right? So you called it out, Zach Tom and then Sam Cosmi. Those two guys being 25 years old and showing that they have pretty high-end, play in them. Where do those guys slot, right? Just because they weren't maybe top 10 picks, does that instantly just make them less valuable than a top 10 pick, right? That's kind of the debate that we need to have now. I think there's the possibility that the answer is yes. I am nervous about Tom after just 1 year of like legitimate starting play where he's the absolute starter, to just put him above that and just think that he's going to repeat that success. So I go back and forth. I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah, and it is a bias. It definitely is, because you look and you go, well, these guys are top 10, top 20 picks for a reason, right? They have the upside. Those are the names you hear. You kind of fall in love with them coming out of college and into the league. And then you have someone like Sam Cosmi who just produces and just does his job and does well. And he's not flashy. He wasn't a huge name. I mean, he has fine draft capital. He's picked 51 overall. He's a second round pick. So why not a 25-year-old consistent tackle who is theoretically in an offense that's only going to improve with someone like Jaden Daniels now at quarterback? And maybe it's just that it takes those guys an extra year of that type of play to prove it, where they don't get the benefit of the doubt of the others. I don't know. I would have them slid down to where we start to discuss the other rookies and like upside players who maybe haven't performed as well as Zach Tom and Sam Cosmi, but theoretically have more upside. I would put them in that tier, and then that's where the argument begins. I wouldn't try to put them in or argue for them to be in that same tier as a McGarry or as a Tunsil, who have been doing it longer, but still have 3-4 years left of that solid play because they're still sub 30-year-old tackles.
It's an interesting conversation because I feel like the answer that we give our users could potentially make or break their team. I think a lot of fantasy football people, right, lose leagues by doing exactly what we're talking about, which is saying like, I'm not 100%. I'm not taking 100%. Sam Cosmi, this guy that's been a 3-year, very consistent high-end player, because I want to go for the ceiling of Olu Fashanu. That's dangerous. Like, that is super, super dangerous and a really easy way to lose. If you hit, it's fantastic. But I think that like that risk curve that you need to start to measure really depends on your appetite, right? I think my appetite would tell me that the right answer is Cosmi over the rookies. But I think yours is telling you shoot for the stars and go with the rookie.
Yeah, that's what I do. I shoot for the stars and go for the rookies. This is what I do. I go for broke. So it's your risk tolerance. What are you willing to tolerate as far as the risk level is concerned? Because are you able to stomach chasing that upside, and then you have 3 or 4 more 50 graded games than you would if you had gone with the consistent veteran, who you take Sam Cosmi and you go, okay, well then I know I just probably won't start him against, Micah Parsons or something when they play the Cowboys or something. I think he had one good game and one really bad game against the Cowboys last year. Yeah. Ended the season pretty poorly. But then had a pretty good first game against Dallas early on. So, it's just, what can you stomach while you're chasing that upside? I am very much not risk averse when it comes to that young talent. and I go for it. So to me, they're all in tiers, and it's however you slot them. I think if we're trying to be responsible stewards and set some rankings for our listeners, our users, our constituents, the right thing to do is probably to put Sam Cosmi above him. So sure, if we want to do what's right.
I am putting
Yes.
Cosmi after Miller.
But it's not fun.
I am putting Cosmi after Miller. So it's going to be Alt at 7, Tunzel at 8, McGarry at 9, Miller at 10, Cosmi at 11. 12 is where it gets interesting. We could put Tom there, but I'm not going to. So I think the debate between those two rookie offensive tackle, I guess, are those the only two we want to debate right now, or do you think there's anybody else that should be part of that conversation? I think, in my opinion, it's those two.
It's those two. I think Fuaga, for reasons we'll discuss, step down. Amarius Mims has the highest upside of anybody, but again, he's not going to start year one. I think I like that he landed with 2 giant tackles in Cincinnati to learn from. But again, trying to be responsible stewards here. I don't think I could sit here and say, yeah, this guy that started 8 college games, right in there with the other, with those other rookies like Fashanu, and I just can't do that. So
the interesting one, 2 names. The interesting one to me that I think we need to maybe consider is Fautanu, because of the landing spot in Pittsburgh. It's just the perfect place for a player like this, where they now have the foundation of what could be a really special offensive line after having a really rough unit for a few years. They also landed like one of my favorite guys at center. So they're just building that the right way. Coaching is fantastic. That they always know how to, coach up their offensive linemen. The addition of Russell Wilson there should make it a little bit easier for those offensive linemen to compete instead of a young Kenny Pickett. George Pickens is turning out to be a really good player. They also got Roman Wilson, who's a really good drop-off kind of receiver, quick guy, right, to make things a little bit easier again on the offensive line. So you look at that offensive line as a whole now, and left to right, it's Fautanu, Sumalowo, I didn't say that right, Zach Frazier.
That's fine. They're used to it.
Yep. James Daniels, and then Broderick Jones. It's a really good situation now in Pittsburgh. And I wonder if they saw enough in him to come bring him and say, you know what, we're going to take this guy. He's going to be, I actually think they're going to play him at right tackle. I think Broderick Jones is going to move to left. They're going to move Fautanu to right. It gets really interesting. And I think that while I think the other 2 guys still are above him, maybe we park it, but I think he needs to be part of that next group and maybe at the top.
You make that argument.
Okay.
I'm still a little leery on the Steelers. I like what they did in the draft, but I'm not quite there yet. And it's more so how much I like those other 2 names than necessarily anything about Fautanu, because I think if you heard us during pre-draft, I really like Fautanu and said he could play tackle, so I'm fine with that. I just really like the other 2 names.
Okay, all right. So
I even like Mims. I like them all. That's the problem with it. Like I said, this draft class, there's a lot of offensive tackles in this class, so it's not as if we're disparaging any of these guys to have someone else above them, because the class is just that deep.
It is.
So I'm not quite there yet with the Steelers, but
it's a really special group. So let's debate Olu and JC Latham. So you mentioned that Latham goes to the Titans. He's going to be moving from right tackle to left tackle, pairing alongside Peter Skoronski, and they also signed the center Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos. So talking about offensive line that are getting a lot better, that should be a situation that gets a lot better. The offensive line coach, you said it, right? This is a guy that has coached up some of the best offensive linemen we've seen, and just always has one of the best units. So it's not a bad situation. And they obviously liked him enough where people were thinking that Latham was going to go maybe like around pick 18. I think that's where the Bengals picked Mims, but he goes top 10 and before Olu going to the Jets. You mentioned probably not starting right away, getting to sit and learn behind some of the older vets. I actually like that a lot for him too, though, right? Because we're talking about, again, if you're drafting one of these rookie tackles, there's a chance they're not going to be starters on your team for 2 or 3 years anyway. So if that's the case, I don't know if that really makes a difference to me that one's going to be the starter this year, one's not going to be the starter till next year. I really care at that point about who's going to be the best player 2 and 3 years down the road. It really, I guess, just depends to you. Do you value the guy getting the starting experience for the offensive line coach that's supposed to be a guru? Or do you like more, the situation where he's getting to learn behind Tyron Smith, who is probably a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? So I can go either way. I have my preference. I want to hear yours.
And my preference is what it is. But I mean, I would say first off, I think you should do your victory lap. I mean, you kind of said JC Latham should be talked about much better than he actually is or was heading into the draft. I think that was reflected on your big board too, if I remember correctly. But again, so take a bow. The thing about these two is we're not exactly sure what their situation is going to look like, say, heading into the 2026 season, right? If you were trying to project ahead a little bit here, we don't know if Levis is a franchise guy. We don't think Rodgers is going to be there for 3 years plus. We think maybe another year or two in New York. So what are the situations around them going to look like? Will it matter because these guys are talented enough to become situation-proof players who are the sort of bellwether guys who lift the talent around them as opposed to needing the talent around them or the situation to be great in order to flourish? I tend to think it's the latter. So this is another really close one to call. I'll just say I like to lean on
pause.
The trait.
Pause, because I want to stop you based on what you just said. I think that Olu has the traits, or if he, like I said, he was kind of raw. Like he needed time to learn. He's getting to learn behind Tyron Smith. But if you give him time to learn and he learns behind a Hall of Famer, I think he is situation proof. Like I think he has the physical ability to be the guys like the guys at the top of this list because of the physical movement skills that he has, the strength that he has. He has the ability to get there. Latham, I think, is more, he is what he is, which is incredible. It's awesome. He's more advanced right now than Olu is. I don't know if he's situation proof. Whereas Olu, I think, is going to continue to rise, and we've only kind of seen the tip. And he could have fallen. If he went to the wrong team, I would have said the opposite. I would have been like, Olu's going to crash. I don't think it's going to work. They're not putting him in this situation. But now the situation that I know that he's in, I think the rise continues up. Latham, to your point, it really is going to heavily depend on what that situation becomes. And I like what they did with the coaching because they got the offensive line coach. But a team is more than offensive linemen. Sure. And I have no idea what to expect of the head coach, which is more important.
And it's the Titans, which in general, they just seem to not ever get beyond a certain level of success, no matter what. So I get it. I think what I default to is traits. And like you're kind of alluding to, you have to hang your hat on something, if nothing else. If you're going to, like, there's that common phrase or saying, right? If you're going to miss big, or if you're going to miss fast. Well, yeah, miss on a trait. In Olu's case, despite the rawness to his game and some of the, being a little bit rough around the edges, he's the best pass blocker in the tackle class this year. So lean on that he's a plus pass blocker as is. And again, he has the traits to translate to the next level as a successful pass blocker. You can lean on that pass blocking. Whereas Latham, okay, he's got the size. He does move well. He's really powerful and he's got some good coaching. But again, he's not best in class at anything in this class. Olu is. So for me, that is the tiebreaker in that you lean back to that trait that you can always go back to, which is plus pass blocker. Like if Olu is not a good pass blocker in the NFL, that's going to be the biggest shock of this entire draft class. So if nothing else, you have that. And that is the more important, so to speak, trait in a tackle. If you're just trying to really simplify it between run and pass blocking, you obviously need them to be a good pass blocker. That's the majority of snaps in this league. That's how offenses are sort of run these days. It's about the passing game. So leaning on that, I think, is what makes Olu the tiebreaker for me.
One other thing to consider is just who are they.
He's a great human being, but yes.
He's got little hands.
He does.
The only other thing to consider too is the division that they're in, the conference that they're in. Like, we look at the Jets, and the Patriots don't really have much in terms of edge rusher that scares you. The Bills, when Von Miller's healthy, it's a little scary, but I think in totality, it's pretty average, if not like slightly below. The Dolphins, all their guys are hurt, right? And then, yes, they just drafted Chop. I think Olu has some familiarity with Chop.
Well, Olu handled Chop in practice. Like anyone in the program will tell you, Olu was the alpha dog in that matchup.
I don't doubt it. And then you look at the Titans, right? And you look at Houston with Will Anderson, pretty good player. Indianapolis just drafted Latu, and they also have Kwity Paye. Jacksonville has Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. Like, that's a lot scarier to me than what Olu's going to have to face. So I think that's definitely, we both basically broke the tie in Olu's favor. I think he's the choice there. I think Latham is right next on the list.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him. It's again, because like we said, we're high on all these guys. So just because we're talking about why one is over the other doesn't mean the other one is far down. I think I would have Latham next as well. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Awesome.
Yeah, begrudge that.
So 10 is Miller, 11 is Cosmi, 12 is Olu, 13 is Latham. Did we get all of the guys up? Yeah, everybody else above is done. So now we got Slater. I think Bowles is interesting because, can you open up his player card? He's pretty interesting in terms of been a pretty consistently good, but just definitely not above good player for a long time. He's also already 32. So I actually think I start to drop him on this list a little bit, because you're not getting like a very good player, and he's getting kind of old, right? Do you start talking about Trent Williams at this point? I think now probably makes a lot of sense to start talking about Trent Williams. But who else is in this conversation of this next tier?
Yeah, so there's a name that's probably algorithmically not going to be very high in these rankings, but I think this is the right time to bring up someone like Paris Johnson Jr., who was last year the highly regarded offensive tackle with a ton of upside, went to the Cardinals, which we all know is bereft of talent, started at right tackle after finishing his career at Ohio State at left tackle. So kind of a forgotten man a little bit there. Because he went to the desert and, nobody was talking about the Cardinals really. But from week 10 onward, Johnson was a top 30 tackle in both run and pass blocking. So, and now he's moving to the left side of the offensive line, his more natural position for the 2024 season. So he's back to his more natural spot. He was ending on an upward trajectory to end the 2023 season. And he's just immensely talented. The offense itself got better. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. I might not have loved everything they did with all of their draft picks, but the Cardinals got better on offense, and better in a way that helps their offensive line when you add weapons to the outside. So it's a bit of an upside chase here because, again, his grading wasn't the greatest as a rookie, but Paris Johnson, this was a top 8 pick or top 10 pick just a year ago. And it's not like he was terrible. He just had a standard rookie season of what you'd expect from someone who's on a pretty bad team. And you see, he's ending the season with a lot of green here. So I think that's someone you have to really look at. And it's not like he was facing bad defenses either. I mean, the Eagles have a very stout defensive front. So again, he ended on a high note. Oh, look at that. He's a melonhead, wouldn't you know? So I think Paris Johnson, I would put him here. I would slot him in here.
So do you remember what I said a few minutes ago about Olu and how immense talent, and because he landed in the right situation, I think it goes upward? Mm-hmm. Paris Johnson, I would say last year was the complete opposite, right?
He was.
Landed in a situation where they moved him to a different side of the offensive line. It was a really bad situation. They had basically nobody else. Kyler was hurt. They had no receiving weapons really to write home about. Wasn't good. He did as good as you could possibly ask somebody to do in that situation. And like you said, he ended the season well. Saying all of that, Kyler's back. Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in, probably helps out that offense all around. They do some other additions, Trey Benson in the draft. I like the situation more. I like that they're moving him back to left tackle. Jonah Williams comes in to play right. Saying that, I don't think they did enough on the offensive line to really help out enough, right? We're like, it's great you have one really shiny object, but the rest is not shiny at all. I worry about him and his consistency and his ability to really get footing, right? As a solid player because of how bad the situation is. And on top of that, I think, if you go to like the all 22 era rankings, I have Paris Johnson below, I think, all three of the guys, right? So like the three we've talked about, Fautanu, and who's the other one? Fuaga, definitely Fuaga, right? So I think,
Oh, really? Okay.
I definitely have him below Fuaga. And then I think Fautanu, it's probably pretty close. And then just based on landing spot, I think he gets a little bit closer. So for me, I think there's other guys that I would have above Paris, but I'm open to the debate. I think 22 years old, going to be 23. He's still super young. I do think this situation got better. I just don't know how much better.
He's younger than Fautanu by almost a full year. He's already played a year in the league, so there's that.
It's fair. It's a good point. But
how would Fautanu have looked his junior year if he was just thrown into the NFL, blocking for, I don't even remember who they had at backup quarterback. I don't know.
It's true. You have good points there. But let's go to Fuaga. Like we haven't talked about him basically at all, and I think it's probably important that we do. So his situation is also pretty interesting to me. So he goes as the fourth offensive tackle, where I thought he was going to be potentially second or third. He goes fourth, and he goes to the Saints. I don't know what the exact number of the pick was. I don't know if you do off the top of your head. If you open his player card, I think it'll pop up for you.
Let's see our handy dandy player card. 14th to the Saints. Yep.
Yeah. So 14. So he actually was lower than where I had him. I had him as like the 10th best player in this draft, and he went 14. I don't know what to make of the Saints, and I think it makes it really hard to make a decision on him. They said that they're playing him at left tackle over Trevor Penning, who was another failed offensive tackle prospect that they drafted.
We tried to tell you that one a couple of years ago. We tried to warn you all. Sorry, go ahead.
Eric McCoy hasn't been great. Cesar Ruiz has not been great. Ramczyk has dealt with some stuff of his own. Olave's pretty good, but that's about it at the receiver position that really scares you. Kamara's getting older. Derek Carr was the most up and down quarterback in the NFL last year. He ended great, but up and down the entire year. I also don't know, with a team like the Saints, are they just always going to be this team that just invests in the now so much that they can never really find their future and find a place in the future as being this elite team? That scares me, and it makes me pretty nervous. And that's why I was saying before how I think the conversation between him, Mims, and Fautanu gets pretty interesting. And then if you throw a Paris Johnson in there, I think those are probably the next guys that I would talk about. Ikem Ekwonu, right? We didn't even talk about him yet. There's a lot of guys that I think
his situation got better.
Right. His situation got a lot better. So I don't think Fuaga is the next guy for me. I think if I had to choose, it would be Fautanu. But who would you pick? You said it would be Paris next for you. He would definitely be the next guy.
Yeah, I was highest on him as a prospect, and now they're all roughly the same age. He just has the circumstance of having to get beaten up in the NFL as a 21-year-old for 3.5 months before ending strongly. So he's got a year under his belt. But I was higher on Paris, the prospect, or higher on him than I was these other two names. And the thing about Fuaga is, again, this is more of a mauler. When we were going through our film sessions at tackle and edge, we saw, and I know it's Latu. This was the first player, defensive player taken in the draft and such, but he was giving up the corner pretty quickly at times against Latu. He beat him up physically. Yes, he did. But if you're a blindside protector, I need more than a mauler. I need a consistent protector against the best of the best at edge rusher in the league in the passing game. I don't think that's something Fuaga can offer today. I think there are times he just gives up that outside edge too easily in pass protection, and that's going to cause for some growing pains, if nothing else. I think he's going to be a great player, but I think we're talking about someone who's going to have to go through the same growing pains as someone like a Paris Johnson, Paris Johnson to me has more upside, especially as a pass protector, which I weight more when discussing offensive tackles. And at least the Cardinals know who their quarterback is 3 years from now. I don't think the Saints do. So I think there's at least direction in Arizona, whereas, like you said, it with New Orleans, they're just living on a credit card, and it's like they make magic every year with a salary cap, but there is no, like, you can't look at them and say and see the vision for 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as to how they're building this team. It's just living on on borrowed time with a team that's not really good enough to have that philosophy. So I've got some concerns about the situation overall, along with the fact that his style of play on the edge it's not lending itself to immediate success early on, I think, because it's hard for any 22-year-old who's used to just throwing people out the club in college to just walk into the NFL and do the same thing against grown men. It doesn't work that way. It's not the Pac-12 anymore. He's going to have an adjustment period.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'm actually good with putting Paris at 14 after Latham and Olu. I think the next guy that I would put on the list, and it's again the argument of what you've seen versus the unknown. I think Zach Tom needs to be slotted in now. Like, I think we need to go and say, this is a guy that's still super, super young. He's now proved to me that he can play one of the hardest positions in football at left tackle. His team around him is super young and super stable, right? Which means, what I mean by that is, it's not like the guys around him are going to be changing year over year, right? He's probably going to be the guy with a very consistent offensive line, with the same quarterback, with the same running back, and the same receivers, probably for the next 2-3 years. I like that, right? And I think there's something to that consistency that you have to say he's worth taking over the risks associated with the other guys that we just haven't seen before. And to your point, Fuaga is 22. Fautanu is going to be 24, like pretty soon. I'm taking him over those guys because I've seen it. So Paris Johnson 14, Zach Tom 15, 16 gets hard because when you talked about who you have over other guys as prospects, you really liked Ikem Ekwonu. If it's Icky, Fautanu, Fuaga, I mean, open up Raymond's card too, because I want to take a look at that. Like, is he interesting at this juncture?
He might be interesting to you. He ain't interesting to me, but sure.
I mean, it's not bad, right? And this is a situation.
I hope it's not bad. He was a 25-year-old rookie. I mean, I hope it's not bad at some point. He's in his prime.
It's a good point, but he's got a good situation too, right? You talked about that being one of the best offensive lines year over year. It hasn't been the last maybe couple just with injuries, but it's traditionally one of the best offensive lines. They get Anthony Richardson back. They bring in Adonai Mitchell. That situation should be getting better, right? So, like, even if he's not above those guys, I think he's in that same group, maybe just below them. But who would you have as the next guy after Tom?
Damn. So it gets really tough because there's a part of me that says, all right, I love Ikem Ekwonu. He was my pet cat. Favorite, he was a favorite of mine. But he also he isn't like the profile that I love in a tackle, 6'4", 320 physical player. Like, it's fine. He had very good tape and all that good stuff. But I'm more of the Paris Johnson, Olu, like super light on the feet, arm length, mirror well, that sort of thing. That's not Ekwonu, but his situation got better. He was grading okay. But again, year 3 is usually now you want to see that jump, and his situation, it got better. So, oh man, boy, that's really tough.
I think what's hard about Icky is he was the first tackle taken that year as well.
Yeah.
So there was really high hopes for him to come out and be the best guy. People were like, my priors are justified. Like, he's good enough to be that dude. And he wasn't, right? He wasn't out of the gate. But again, it might not have been his fault. That situation was awful. They now bring in Damian Lewis. They have Robert Hunt bringing in as well, right? Austin Corbett is decent at center. The offensive line gets a lot better. They add 2 receivers, both with speed to their game so that they can get the ball out quicker. They also bring in Jonathan Brooks, a running back that has a receiving ability. Bryce Young hopefully looks a lot better too, which will help everybody out. I'm not as high as Ikem Ekwonu as everybody else was then, but I think I might be higher on him now than everybody else is now.
He's trending better
Cross
than
too.
Cross. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Cross.
I was like, we're gonna start going down the list now, and then you got Cross to throw in the mix, and it's like, well,
injuries to Cross take him down a peg for me. He just hasn't been
Yes.
healthy enough. Same with Abraham Lucas. Those guys just haven't been healthy enough to be in this tier, although I am still super high on them.
Yeah, we loved Lucas, man. That was our guy. We just watched him we were like, that's the guy no one's talking about, and then kind of blew up a little bit, and now the injuries. Is it me, or does it feel to you too? Do you have that same kind of feeling that they haven't even really done anything bad or wrong or had a bad offseason, but it just kind of seems or feels like the Seahawks are just kind of trending down for some reason. Like, not sure why. Like, Geno kind of solidified himself, and is it just me? But it feels like they're just not, like, the vibes are just not the same. That we're not anticipating much better than kind of what they showed, and they're kind of on the downswing. You feel that same way?
I do, but maybe for different reasons. So, like you're saying about Geno, I think Geno is good enough to keep you above water. I don't think Geno is enough to win. So I think what you're feeling is this. If you're not improving at quarterback, you're probably not improving at all, because the rest of the roster is not really bad, right? You have two of the best receivers in the NFL. Your offensive line, you've had some success hitting on these guys. And I think the other thing too is something you always talk about is finding the identity of the team. And I think they could have gone and said, we were this defensive minded team, but our offense right now is maybe our strength. Let's shore up the offensive line. Let's get the quarterback of the future. Let's, have these receiving weapons just blow it up, because they can, but they've really gone super heavy on defense. And I love the Byron Murphy pick. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it, but they spent a crap ton of money on Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, right? Like Draymond Jones, Boye Mafe. They're trying to build this nucleus on the D line and in the interior. I just don't think they got edge, right? Like, we talk about the most valuable positions. It's like quarterback is the offense, edge is the defense. I don't love their edge rushers. So if you don't have edge rushers and you don't have quarterback, it's great that you have an awesome defensive interior. It's awesome that you hit on cornerback and Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. But it really just doesn't mean a lot if you don't have a quarterback that's going to take you deep into the playoffs, or have an edge rusher that's going to get after the quarterback at a high rate. So I agree with what you're saying. And I think that's part of the reason why it's like I'm super hesitant to just bet on Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas to be super successful, because are they going to put them in a situation with the pieces around them to solidify that offense? They could have this year. They really could have, and they just kind of chose not to.
Yeah, and we have to see how, especially I think Lucas comes back from injury and how he's holding up. I feel like there were some notes about him earlier today or even this week that he's still on the road to recovery, and we'll see how that goes. So that's a part of it.
Before we move on too, it's like we're talking about this draft, them making that decision to go defense when they could have went offense, shored up that offensive line a little bit. But we didn't even talk about last year, right? They took Devin Witherspoon at 5 over, any quarterback not named Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Could they have made a move to move up just a couple of spots to get Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud? Could they have taken a gamble on one of the other quarterbacks, right? Will Levis, like, I know, we're not super high on Will Levis, but like when the quarterback that you have is so middle of the pack, kind of feel like you need to start taking swings. And I think people have been predicting it year over year, like, they're going to go quarterback. Yeah. This is the year they're going to do it. And they just haven't, right? So just being stuck there and just, I don't know how I feel.
Yeah. I think Drew Aller would love the Pacific Northwest, to be honest. He's that kind of guy. Yeah, it's a conundrum. It's like you're drafting, because they're drafting good players. So you're drafting well enough to just further cement your place in quarterback purgatory, because you're going to be drafting in the middle to early second half of the draft every single year. So maybe that's it. And we just see that slow slide coming while we go, well, Tyler Lockett's a little older now. And, now what? Maybe that's it. So anyway, yeah. So I guess Ekwonu is probably the first of those names there. I don't even know who the hell I'm arguing anymore. Ekwonu is the first of those names.
Anybody you want, but yeah. Icky, it's Fautanu, it's Fuaga, it's Mims, and any of the guys that we didn't say, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like, what about Mims? Moten, I don't know, man.
Dawkins, Brown. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about these guys. I
Well,
personally push those guys down, but that's me.
you gave me a strong case on Bernard Raimann, and he's 26 years old. I mean, he's, we got an extra 3 years on someone like Moten. I think if let's make a list of three. If I'm trying to group three names here, yeah. I think it's Ekwonu, and I'm going to make it four now. I think it's Ekwonu, Fuaga, Raimann, or Raimann, however you say it. Did I say? And then Mims. Where the hell are we putting Trent Williams?
Oh, shoot.
He's right there, staring at us in the face with the second best season last year.
Yeah, I think Williams is probably above, right below.
The thing with Williams is I think it's so cut and dry that, like, hey, if you're contending, you rank him higher. If you're not, you don't. Because if you're not a contender, you're not either going to, I would say draft, but you probably don't know you're not a contender until you're already doing rookie draft. So if you're not a contender, you're trading him. If you are a contender, you're trading for him or keeping him. So it's kind of like, no matter where we slide him, we know, I mean, he's going to be 36 years old. And so you know what you're getting. You're just getting an elite short-term player.
Right.
I don't think a ranking doesn't do it justice. So
it doesn't, but I think I have him lower than this because these guys are, you're talking about 10 years of football players.
That's one. You said that's a trap last episode. Remember that?
But to 1 year, that's tough. So give me your group again.
All right, so we got Ekwonu, Fuaga, Mims, and Raimann, I think.
Okay, I'm going to make the case against Mims because I know you like Mims and you're going to say all the nice things. But besides him being super inexperienced and super raw, I talked about Olu going and playing behind future Hall of Famers. Mims is playing behind guys that are good football players, but in no way, shape, or form are future Hall of Famers. So while I think it's great because they're similar size and skills, I don't know if he's going to get this transcendent learning experience to be that guy. For example, like I might like Orlando Brown over Mims at this point.
Oh no,
like
don't say that.
Like it might be the truth. And I hate saying that. I really do, but I'm not nearly as high on Mims and the landing spot as you are, although I think it is a good one.
Here's the thing, right? Now, I don't know if we're about to derail the episode. Ted Williams wasn't a great hitting coach, right? It's just like sometimes you're a future Hall of Famer and you're like, just be great. Just do this. Like, why can't you just take this guy and just now he can't move because I have vice grips for hands because I'm Tyron Smith. But the thing
remember that Aaron Rodgers never had a bad offensive line, and it's not because they never used a first or second round pick on an offensive lineman. That's why.
Oh, sure.
Like, and I know that Burrow's awesome in his own right. But the offensive line hasn't been good under Burrow.
Sure, but that's because they've had guys like Jonah Williams in front of him.
Say what you want, man. I think it's a young quarterback doesn't necessarily raise the offensive line like an old quarterback does.
Yes, but here's the thing, right? I think I said this on maybe it was like the day after the draft or the day after the first round. Like, while he doesn't have a future Hall of Famer kind of in the room with him, he's got guys that are his exact archetype, meaning Amarius Mims, 6'7", 340. Orlando Brown is 6'8", 345, and Trent Brown is like 6'8", 340. Like they're all the same size. They're all gigantic, just like actual human trees. And so to be in a room with two veterans like that, again, you can't, like, there's some things that you can teach or a 6'4", 310 offensive tackle that just won't work for someone who's 6'8", 345. You kind of have to work with them differently because they're different archetypes of players. You don't do the exact same thing with wide receivers who are 5'10", 185, 190 as you do if they're 6'2", 212. It's just different breeds, right? They're all the same breed. So he can soak up everything, right? And there is no transfer of knowledge lost, or there is no adjustment for the coaches from one, veteran to the young player. They're all going to get coached the same technique. It works for them all because they're all the same archetype. That's actually why I love the landing spot for Mims, albeit not for 24. So I'll say that's why I'm high. On Mims, I'll say one reason why I'm lower on him, and then you can kind of say your piece, and then we'll see kind of where it ends up. But I think a lot of people aren't talking enough about how this guy hurt himself at the combine. Yes, he started 8 college games. That part doesn't really bother me too much. It's more so that he started 8 college games because he wasn't fully healthy his entire college career. Then he goes to the combine, crushes it with his frame and everything else, but then like hurts his hamstring again at the combine. Is like, is this just one of those guys who's just because of the way he's built, is he not going to ever be able to stay healthy? I mean, this is a 21-year-old body that's starting to have some of these nagging pulls and such that are impacting him and causing him to miss time at 21. Is that something I'm going to have to worry about his entire career? And does that then shorten his career? That's one thing I think people aren't talking enough about when it comes to Amarius Mims. I don't care about the number of games played. If there's enough on film for me to know the player, why are you hurting yourself running around at the combine?
Yeah, I think I told you that. I like guys that run a 40 and
probably
pull
did.
up with a hammy. Yeah. Yes, I did, because I said John Ross may have broke the combine, but he pulled up with a hammy afterward. It's like, that is a differentiator. Like if you are just fast and then you hurt yourself doing something athletic, that's not good. Like that's not a good indicator of your future successes. And I'm not saying Mims doesn't deserve to be in this conversation. I'm just saying that I don't think he can possibly be the next guy. So I'm just saying, like, if you threw out the 4 options, I'm deducting 1. You can keep going.
Okay. I think, I can't believe I'm saying this because you sold me. I think Bernhard Raimann might have to be the top of this list because he's 26 years old. So, I mean, and
we already had Icky, right? So it's Icky, then him, or no, above Icky?
Okay. No, I think he's above Icky. Icky's in this group of 4. And the reason is Icky hasn't shown that next step yet. And granted, he hasn't been in a situation where he really could. It would have been not a miracle, but it would have been asking a lot for him to have shown that already. So he absolutely could, but he absolutely could not. And 15 months from now, we're going to look back on this and go, we had Bernhard Raimann here, 26 years old, came into the league, 2 solid or really better than solid season in 2023. He was a top 8 tackle overall at 26 years old. And you just bump that guy down the list. Why? Because he's not a sexy name. Like I think you have to have him atop the list when you put that in mind. So you convinced me because he wasn't even going to be, I wasn't even going to consider him here. And there you go.
Cool.
He's top list now.
He's 16 right after Zach Tom. If I'm the one debating the next things, I think it's Icky. I think it's Fautanu. I think it's Fuaga. And I think Charles Cross is right there too. I think those would be my next guys. And honestly, I could go any which way about them. But I think if it was up to me, it is probably Icky because the situation got so much. It's not like the situation got better. The situation got so much better that it could drastically change him in a way that we just haven't seen before, right? Like it's almost as if like Paris Johnson, right? We're saying we got to kind of start from scratch with saying that those were preseason games. Now is going to be the first time we get to see him in a real game. I would have Icky there for those reasons. And also I still believe it. Like I've always believed in him. I just didn't think he was a top 10 offensive tackle in the NFL, but I think he could be a top 20 tackle in the NFL. And that's, I think, what he's kind of what I'm projecting that he become. But I still would make the argument that Fautanu's situation might be the best of anyone. I just get a little nervous kind of to your, I'm agreeing with you here. He's the same age as Ekwonu. Like they're exactly the same.
Yeah, Ekwonu took his lumps. Yeah, let's see here. Ekwonu here, 23.6, Fautanu. Yeah, 23 point. Let's see their birth. Hey, me and Ekwonu share the same birthday.
I knew you liked him.
Fautanu is 20 days older.
They're 20 days apart, right?
And Fautanu's older. So
right. So I think for me, for those reasons, I've seen Icky. I know that at least he can be stable to the point where he's a starting level tackle. I go him, but I think Fautanu's my next, and Fuaga and Cross are the next guys for me. I don't know if you want to debate some of those, but like to me, that's
taking
like
Cross over Mims.
I'm 100% taking Cross over Mims. I think this is going to be the best year of Cross's career and the best year of Ekwonu's career.
Sure, and Mims is probably not going to start, but
right.
But Mims also has the greatest frame of any offensive tackle probably ever.
You say that, but I don't love that frame. That's not like what I'm looking for. I'm just not looking for the behemoth. Like, I understand that it's valuable and it's cool, and it also gives you like a nice floor. You're going to be stronger than other guys. But like, I like Olu's frame.
And it's the AFC North though. Like, he's built for the AFC North, like just this big behemoth. It's cold in December. They're playing the Ravens. It's like the sleet's coming down, and he's just, ragdolling people. It's he might be injured. It's cold, so his muscles tighten up, and his hammy is gone, and that could be it too. I'm gonna look at Cross again, and it's not fantastic. It's not fantastic.
You also haven't like fought me on having Fautanu over Fuaga.
No, because I really don't like Fuanga's landing spot. I don't. And I mean, I like them both as players. So even if I don't love the Pittsburgh landing spot as much as you do, the New Orleans slot scares me. And it's not that I think he's going to bust. I don't think that at all. I'm still high on Fuaga. It's just, it's not the best spot for him to reach his potential, in my opinion. So that's what knocks him down a peg to where I'm not feeling strong enough to really go to bat for him right now.
Open up Brown's card.
Orlando Brown?
Nope. Shelby?
Oh, Spencer.
Shelby.
Who
what the hell?
You think it's Shelby Ford?
Spencer Brown. I mean, I liked him last year, but yeah, he hasn't done it consistently.
That's the kind of 6'8" that's like, you're just too tall. Like McGlinchey, it's like it's cool until you're literally like parallel to the ground because Micah Parsons has you like, just threw you on your side because he got right under your chest. I could go. I don't know, man. I get all the arguments why you would have Cross over Mims. Just Cross hasn't done so well enough for me to be like, yeah, I'll do it. Like
the situation hasn't gotten better.
Chaser. Right. So I'm the ceiling chaser that goes, Mims is going to sit back. He's going to learn from two guys that are just like him, and he's going to be better for it. And then year two, he's going to slide right in at right tackle because you have Orlando Brown at left, and Mims played right tackle at Georgia. So he's going to slide right into that familiar spot and just have at it with a franchise quarterback behind him. Jamar Chase, Jermaine Burton, let's just say he works out and, the off-field stuff doesn't derail anything there. You got a talented offense with a great quarterback, and he's at his natural spot. I see it. I see it. I see it in 24 months as to how it could work out with Mims. Cross, I'm looking at it and I say, this is how it is today, and I don't see it getting materially better today. And that's where I go, let me take the shot on the upside with Mims.
All right, so then let's do that. So it's Icky, Fautanu, Fuaga, Mims, Cross, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I want to quickly, if you could just scroll through like slowly but quickly so that we can just see, is there any other young,
okay.
Is there any other like super young guys that we feel like we need to, like, so Morgan's probably going to be moved to guard.
Yep.
So he probably won't be there. I know we have to talk about Guyton. I just don't think he's there yet.
Braxton Jones, his situation got a lot better.
Jones and Wright, right? And then who's
Jones
under that?
And Darnell Wright.
Our pictures are covering it.
Oh, after Darnell Wright is Brian O'Neill. Yeah, he just kind of is what he is.
Come on.
Don't do that.
Open him up. Open him up.
Oh my gosh.
The consistency, dude.
It's consistent.
Good. That's good. You gotta like that.
Yeah, it looks like Kirk Cousins, and now Kirk Cousins is gone. So now what? Now what are we doing with that?
Okay. I don't know. I kind of like it. I like Brian O'Neill.
Gosh.
I think this next group, because the young guys we just kind of marked over there, besides maybe Darnell Wright.
Taylor Decker. He's on Steve's all-22 fantasy team.
Taylor Decker.
That's another one.
It's really good.
It's really good. He's in a great offense. 29. For some reason, it feels like he's not going to be that guy who's playing. Like, I don't know why. And it's like another thing, like maybe it's just me, but it feels like Taylor Decker is like one of those guys who all the other 29-year-olds were like, yeah, they're going to be there for 3 or 4 more years. And with Taylor Decker, it's like, for some reason, we think he's not. I don't know.
Who's the
Maybe
guy
it's
that
just
retired? Who's the guy that retired from the Titans?
me. Oh, gosh, the guy that retired from the Titans.
The
I don't know.
tackle.
Luan.
Taylor Lewan. I think they were the same draft. And I think that's why in my head, I think Taylor Decker is like 45 years old, but he's not, right? Just because Lewan didn't really last all that long.
Mm-hmm.
I think now we need to start adding in some of the good vets. Lane Johnson, right? Like we didn't talk about him either, but he's old too. But I think you're probably taking Lane Johnson and you're taking Trent Williams over anybody left on this list.
Oh, let's just slide Trent somewhere, and wherever it is, I think like the explanation is the explanation, and that justifies whether he's like 15 or like 19 or even like 11. Like I feel like you could slot Trent anywhere because everyone just kind of knows what the deal is with Trent. So
right,
he can almost be like his own category. Like everybody else is a number, and he's just like a letter. Like he's just like IF. Like if you're contending,
yes. Well, and we obviously can't do that. But like in my mind, it's like we just listed the 5 young guys that I would bet in. But it's hard because Darnell Wright probably deserves to be there too. Or excuse me, Braxton Jones probably deserves to be in that conversation too.
Yeah.
I think Braxton Jones is next. I think he's next.
I also think he's next. I don't think there's anyone here that. Yeah, I think he's next, and I would definitely have him above Darnell Wright. I think we both are in agreement there.
Yeah, I don't even like Darnell Wright.
Next.
Okay,
that's hard.
But I think because the high end of Trent Williams and Lane Johnson, there's no other young guys or even older guys that I would take above them because of the high level of play that I'm getting from them. This is where they go.
Yep, I would put them there, and then it's like we have Braxton Jones. I think I would put Braxton Jones above Abraham Lucas, but I think before we get into any of the other names here, it's all about injury recovery for Abraham Lucas.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's a little bit weird. Like, what do you do with him?
Agreed. You know? Who did we say is next? Who did you just say is next?
Braxton Jones, right? You have him down after.
I have Braxton Jones, then Trent Williams and Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
So that is 22, 23, 24. And I think now we have to go through and say there was a few older guys that I would still take over some of the younger guys that are left, including Tyler Guyton, who is probably who we end on since he's the last first-round pick tackle.
Yep.
To talk about, because all the other guys like Graham Barton's going to be a center, Morgan's going to play guard.
Yeah.
But if you scroll back up, I think this is where we get into.
So you got
Dawkins. Orlando Brown, Dawkins. We talked about Brian O'Neill,
Decker,
Jake Matthews, and Decker.
That's
where that group is.
It. Yeah, I think that's the next group.
Who's at the top of it? O'Neill? O'Neill was pretty freaking good.
To me, it's Decker.
To you?
Okay. I don't care. There was a big Decker situation is more stable now. I mean, we don't know how Minnesota is going to do with Sam Darnold at quarterback, right? Depending whichever one wins that job. And how much different does the offense look? You know, defenses are going to play them a bit differently, and that makes it a little bit tougher on the line there.
It does, but with how consistent he's been and at 29 years old, he should be able to kind of be good independently. I mean, Taylor Decker, I agree. I'm fine with Taylor Decker being above Brian O'Neill. No problem. But I do think those are the next two guys. And then I think it's Orlando Brown. Open up Jake Matthews. I want to see him.
Yeah, I think the only thing with Matthews really is his age, because otherwise he's another just beacon of consistency here.
Right. And then did we miss anybody else? Is there anybody above that we just kind of scrolled past?
No, I mean, you have down Brown, right? Orlando Brown's the other one, 28 years old. So again, I think it's really he's not quite as consistent, but there's a 4-year age difference here. And again, you kind of have this downswing here in 23, but again, remember, no Burrow. So Burrow, he gets that boost there. I kind of like what the Bengals have been doing as a roster overall. So he gets back into that mid 70s-ish grading, mid to high 70s at offensive tackle at 28 years old.
Yep.
I think you take him over the 32-year-old in Matthews, but maybe Matthews is better in 24, and then you just have more runway thereafter with someone like Brown.
Right. So I think that's the deal breaker. Decker, O'Neill, Orlando Brown, Jake Matthews. That is 25, 26, 27, 28. Nobody else, right? I think that's pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's it. Pipkins is not going to be a factor here.
No, he basically just got replaced.
Yep.
I think this is where we start talking about Guyton, Darnell, Wright, and any other young guy Walker, maybe you have the conversation. I don't think I'm ready to yet. Harrison was a first round pick last year for the Jags.
Anton Harris. Yeah. A lot of people just forget about him. He just, yeah, because he had a poor year, but he's a rookie offensive tackle. It's going to happen. You just kind of wish he showed more to end the year like someone like Paris did. But
right.
He certainly could. But I think I would have him below even some of the rookies this year. Like we'll talk about Guyton. Or are we talking about Guyton now? Is this just what we're doing here?
Well, it's that group. I think that's the group. Those are the next guys. It's Harrison, Guyton. We said Harrison, Guyton, Darnell Wright, and there was one other. Now I'm forgetting.
We had Charles Cross. Not Charles Cross. Lucas.
Right? Abraham Lucas. Yep. Abraham Lucas. And I said if we want to talk about Walker, but open him up.
Rashid,
I think he's going to move. Yeah, I think he's going to move around a lot.
Yeah,
so
it's like
I don't even know if he's sure thing
is
at
the
tackle.
Packers' plan settled? Exactly. Are you going
to be settled? That's I don't know.
Yeah, is it going to be Tom and Walker at tackle and then Morgan inside?
I don't know. Or is it like that's what it sounds like? Because it sounds like they do like Walker at tackle. He's 6'6", 313. I think he has more of a frame for it than Morgan. But I think there's flexibility, right? And you never really know. So I agree. I think those are that guy's a little below. So let's just keep it to those four then. Abraham Lucas. I don't remember the other ones. Tyler Guyton, Darnell Wright, and Anton Harrison. Those are the four.
Yep. Yeah.
Lead.
Here's the thing I'm going to make the Guyton pitch since, I'm the Cowboys guy here, whatever, right? Yes, Guyton, athletic, but really raw. But the Cowboys have Duke Manyweather like 2 blocks away from their facility, and he's already working with him. That's the O-line mastermind, just absolute guru. This guy just takes offensive linemen and just turns them into studs. Like he turns garbage into gold, whatever cliche you want to throw out there. He's the guy. He's the guru. And the Cowboys don't miss on these picks. When they take offensive linemen in the first round for a decade plus now, it's just hit after hit after hit after hit. Whether it's Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, they know how to find these guys in their hits. And this is kind of like their little secret sauce right here. Like, take a guy, he's a little raw. Okay, Guyton, just go work with Duke Manyweather over there. While none of the other rookies can get coaching from their coaches due to the CBA, and you're just going to come back like a refined player. Guyton's someone who has the tools, has the athleticism, and is in a good landing spot to reach that ceiling. We've seen it be done before, and he's following that same path. So I for those reasons, I am higher on him than the other names on this list, I would say. Just bench him week 1 because he's going up against Myles Garrett and the Browns. So you definitely don't want to start him his very first game out the gate. But I think when you factor in the situation around a guy who is boom or bust, there's a lot of factors on the boom side that support that side of the fence than the bust.
I like Guyton. I've always liked Guyton. I think that he went to the best situation possible for him for all the reasons you said. I also think that, like you said, like the Cowboys don't miss. They don't really miss on offensive linemen. That situation always just works out for them. Do I like Guyton over Lucas? Probably not as a prospect.
I was going to say he's also next to Tyler Smith. We didn't even talk about that, but he's next to like a borderline all-pro guard alongside him too now. So,
the only other thing that we didn't talk about, right, situation-wise, scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably at 9 that CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott will be back. But I don't know how factual that is, right? Like that's
they're going to be back. They're going to be back. The Joneses are going to get bent over a table, and they're going to give them whatever they want.
All right. So I'm fine putting Guyton there. I do think Abraham Lucas is a better player in my mind, but the injury stuff is still super scary. Saying that, I would still definitely take him over the other two guys that we talked about, Harrison and Wright. Do you agree with that?
Harrison, Wright. So you're saying Harrison above Darnell, Wright?
No. I'm saying Lucas above both of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would have Lucas there above both of them, and then
So then the debate is, and this is actually pretty cool because we're going to probably end the conversation now that all the rookie tackles are done with these two players, and that'll actually get us right to 32. So one for, yeah.
I think I lean Wright, even though he's not my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Harrison wasn't my favorite either. And I think they did more to help out. I mean, they completely turned that situation around in Chicago. I would just lean Wright. I think he obviously got a franchise quarterback now who could actually really be a consistent threat through the air.
Mm-hmm.
They got Roma Dunze along with Keenan Allen as well. So it's not just like they're relying on rookies to improve that situation. They went out and got Keenan Allen, who's someone who you do get the ball to quickly, which again is offensive line friendly. They got DeAndre Swift. I mean, the personnel is just so much better. So I could see the leap. You have the natural progression of a player like Darnell Wright, along with a leap in situation. I think he's next up. But you tell me why you disagree if you do, other than just that you don't really like him that much.
Yeah, I don't know if I disagree. I just watch this dude's tape so much, and there's so much I don't like. And it's not that he couldn't be a good football player, because obviously, like, young guy, I want him to be successful. Obviously, I don't because he's a Bear, but he's one of those players that, like, from the draft immediately, I'm just like, I can't buy into it. I can't buy into it. There's certain aspects about his game that just, to me, are so hard to solve. And they put him at tackle where I thought he should have been a guard. Caleb Williams does hold the ball a little bit. Like, he's one of those guys that, so, like, I don't know if, and like Darnell Wright isn't built for that. Like, he's just not a tackle that, like, that's like Olu is that tackle. Like, that's what you want for that quarterback, not Darnell Wright. And if you would have asked me Roma Dunze or Olu for them, I would have went Olu. I would have moved right inside and shored up that offensive line, especially since they had Keenan Allen and DJ Moore already. But I get it. Harrison, if you want to pull up his card real quick, he has more of a frame for tackle that I prefer. His tape actually reminds me a little bit of Jordan Morgan, who the Packers got. Like, it's kind of a similar tape where they're good, but they make a lot of physical mistakes because they're just not overwhelming. Their strength is just not overwhelming. But he could be good, right? And Trevor Lawrence is the Caleb Williams before Caleb Williams. They did go get Brian Thomas Jr., so they're making the situation better. I could go back and forth, but I think for the sake of the conversation, Darnell Wright's situation is obviously better, and that can just be the deciding factor if we want it to be. But I would say, me personally, if I'm drafting, I'm probably going Harrison over Wright.
If I'm drafting, I think I go Wright over Harrison. Because of what you said, I think it's just a situation. I think it got a lot better. I mean, they both weren't in great situations last year. Wright performed a bit better in, I think, a bit of a worse situation. Both relatively the same age. I agree with you. I think Wright would be best on the inside. I've always been a proponent of him kicking inside to guard, but I think he's serviceable at tackle. Maybe better than serviceable. We'll kind of see here how he develops. I guess, is this 1,000 push-up thing for you? Because I would have Wright over Harrison. No,
it's not. And honestly, I don't think the difference is going to be massive, because I honestly don't think either of them develop into studs. So if we're talking about a guy developing just into an average starter, and in all 22, what that means for you is, right, he's probably sitting second or third on your depth chart behind your starters. I'm fine with that, right? Like, if I'm okay with this being my backup's backup. Definitely not worth 1,000 push-ups, but I mean, I'll do them for you anyway if you want me to.
Sure, I got my lifting a little earlier today, so I'm passing.
Nice.
But yeah, I think I agree with that. And when you get to this point too, like you said, based on where they are on your depth chart, highest is they're your second tackle, but more than likely they're your third tackle. And when it's probably just going to be matchup dependent on this point, depending on the week, right? If one of them is going up against Cleveland, you're not going to start them. You don't want them lining up against Myles Garrett. So I think at this point, when you're trying to split these hairs, it's matchup dependent week to week. Unless you individually personally feel strongly about one over the other. I think that's kind of how you play it when you get down to this level, because you're looking at, like you said, your third offensive tackle on the depth chart that is really just maybe starting during bye weeks. And then again, maybe if there's a matchup situation there that you just got to have.
I'm almost nervous to recommend that we do this for receiver. I'm like, truly
that'll be like a whole
week-long
series. We got to figure out how to do that one. Yeah.
No, it's got to be an hour and 20 minutes.
That's not going to happen. You're going to spend an hour and 20 minutes on Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy, and that's it.
Maybe. All right. Well, I'm giving in. It's Darnell Wright at 31. It's Anton Harrison at 32. And we got a top 32, and we got all of the first-round rookie tackles into that list, which I'm pretty proud of. And I actually think it's a pretty strong list. Like, I think we did a decent job. Like, there's people out there that are going to debate some of this, which is fine. But, like, at the end of the year, tell me we're wrong, right? Like, it's fine.
Exactly. We're not. So,
yeah, we're not.
And wishing good health for Abraham Lucas.
Wishing good health for Abraham Lucas. But we do have some big announcements coming out next week. So stay tuned. We're going to be I won't tease anymore. We have some big announcements coming next week. So definitely tune in then. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at all22_PFF. And give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. And have a great rest of your day.
I'm a ghost.